The rain came down in silver sheets that night, swallowing the forest in sound. The sky was a bruised black, heavy with storm and secrets. Wind tore through the trees like it was trying to warn her, run faster. Don't look back. Lila didn't listen. She already was running. Her boots sank into the mud as she stumbled through the underbrush, clutching the hood of her coat tight over her head. Her breath came in sharp bursts, the cold slicing her lungs with every gasp. The world around her was all blur and motion, trees leaning close, shadows shifting, thunder chasing her heels. Behind her, faint and distant, a howl broke through the storm. Deep, commanding. Heart dash stopping. Her steps faltered for just a second. That sound. She knew it. She had once loved it. Lightning flashed, turning the world white. For a split second, the forest glowed and she saw it. A tall, dark figure standing at the edge of the clearing she'd just fled from. Even through the curtain of rain, his golden eyes burned like fire through smoke. Her heart twisted. Cooled her. Lila turned away, forcing herself forward, branches tearing at her arms, tears mixing with the rain. She couldn't stop now. Not when freedom was so close. Not when every beat of her heart carried the weight of what she was running from. It hadn't always been this way. A few months ago, she'd lived quietly in the small cabin by the river, tucked deep in the forest's edge, woman of soft smiles and silent strength. She baked her own bread, grew her own herbs, and tried not to draw attention from the nearby town. To the world, she was just another human trying to live in peace. But the truth was far from ordinary. Lila had once been part of the Blackridge Pack, the most feared and respected werewolves of the northern woods. She had lived among them, trusted them, loved one of them, until love became dangerous. Until it made her lie. Now she carried that lie like a heartbeat inside her. Her days were filled with the quiet rhythm of survival. She rose with the dawn, fetched water from the well, fed the chickens, and tried not to think of him. But some nights, when the moon rose full and pale over the trees, the air shimmered strangely, and she would feel it again, the pull of something unseen. It started as a whisper under her skin. Then it grew stronger, a warmth spreading through her veins, a restless ache in her chest. That was when she'd hear his voice in her dreams. Lila. Just her name. Spoken like a promise and a wound. She'd wake up trembling, clutching her blanket, convinced someone had been standing by the window. But when she looked, there was only mist outside, curling through the trees like breath. That night, the night of the storm, something was different. The dreams had grown louder. The whisper had turned to calling, and the shadows outside her cabin moved like they remembered her name. She had tried to ignore it at first. She lit candles, brewed tea, held her trembling hands still. But then came the scentwood smoke and pine, sharp and familiar, carried through the cracks of the door. It was his scent, the scent she had sworn she'd never breathe again. Her knees went weak. Her heart started racing. He had found her. In a panic, Lila packed what little she had: clothes, bread, a blanket, and the one small photograph she'd never thrown away. Calder's hand tangled with hers, both of them laughing under the sunlight that day before it all went wrong. Now the photo was wet, pressed to her chest as she ran through the storm. In town, no one knew the truth about her. To them, she was a quiet stranger who sold herbs and honey at the market. A gentle woman with kind eyes and a sadness that never left her. But if anyone looked too closely, they'd see the faint mark on her shoulder, hidden beneath fabrica, scar-shaped like a crescent moon. The Alpha's mark, the bond mark that once tied her to Calder Blackridge, leader of his pack. But that bond was broken, wasn't it? Sometimes she wasn't sure. Sometimes she swore she could still feel his rage, his pain, his longing echoing faintly inside her like a second heartbeat. And sometimes, in the distance, she'd hear wolves crying under the moon, and wonder if they cried for her. The rain slowed as she reached the river crossing. The wooden bridge stretched ahead of her, old and creaking under the weight of the storm. She hesitated. The wind carried something strange silence, the kind that hums before danger. Then she heard it again. The howl. Closer now. Her pulse spiked. She ran across the bridge, her boots pounding the wet planks. Halfway across, lightning cracked the sky open. For a moment, she saw movement in the woods, ahead, a figure darting between the trees. Not Calder. Something else. Something. Wrong. It was too tall, too fast, its eyes glowing faintly red in the dark. A rogue. Lila froze, fear flooding her chest. Rogues were wolves without packs, wild, lost and hungry for blood. They could smell her fear. And worse, they could smell the secret she carried. A branch snapped behind her. She turned slowly, heart in her throat. Through the sheets of rain, she saw him. Calder. He stood at the edge of the bridge, soaked, fierce, his eyes blazing gold even in the storm. His voice was rough with rain and desperation. Layla, stop. But before she could speak, before she could decide whether to run toward him or away, something growled in the dark. Ahead. Low, deep, hungry. Her breath hitched. The rogue stepped into view, lips curling back, its eyes locked on her throat. Calder's growl answered, a sound that shook the air. He moved so fast she barely saw him shift one heartbeat. He was a man. The next, a massive wolf, silver and shadow. He lunged between her and the beast, teeth flashing, claws tearing through mud. The sound of snarling filled the night, wild and brutal. Lila stumbled back, clutching her chest. Rain fell harder, lightning slicing through the black sky, revealing two monsters locked in battle, one to kill, one to protect. When it was over, Calder stood panting over the fallen rogue, his fur streaked with blood and rain. Slowly he turned back to her. His golden eyes met hers through the storm, full of anger, pain, and something like relief. Why did you run? His voice came rough and human again, even as his body trembled with the shift. Lila could barely speak. Because I had to. Because of him, he asked. Thunder roared overhead, shaking the sky. Lila's eyes dropped to the ground, to the hand pressed over her stomach, protective, trembling, guilty. And in that small, fragile motion, Calder understood. His face went still. The rain seemed to stop. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying her lie and his heartbreak into the night. The storm passed by morning, but its echo clung to the forest like a ghost. The world was hushed, soaked in grey mist, and the air smelled of wet pine and smoke. Lila sat by the small window of her cabin, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Her hands still trembled from what she had seen the night before. The rogue, the fight, and Calder's eyes staring through her soul as if he had read the secret she had tried so hard to hide. He hadn't followed her after that. When she turned back on the bridge, he was gone like a shadow swallowed by the storm. That she knew better. Calder never left anything unfinished. Now the forest felt different, watching, listening. The wind that once sang softly through the trees now whispered her name in strange ways. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps outside, just beyond the door, just beyond the light. When she opened it, there was no one there, only the faint smell of earth and fur. Her little home, once a refuge, had begun to feel like a trap. By afternoon, the sky brightened, but the forest never truly did. Lila decided to visit the village for supplies. The path was muddy and narrow. lined with tall trees that leaned close as if gossiping about her. Her basket bumped against her hip as she walked. And though the air was still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. She glanced over her shoulder. Nothing. Just silence and Miss Dot at the market. The usual chatter filled the square, farmers calling out prices, children chasing each other between stalls, the smell of bread and smoke drifting in the air. "Lila," called Mrs. Hemsley, the old baker with kind eyes and a sharper tongue. "You look pale, dear. Storm keep you up?" Layla tried to smile. "Just a rough night." Mrs. Hemsley frowned. "You be careful out there. Strange things in the woods lately. Hunters say they've seen eyes watching from the ridge. Not wolves, something worse." Lila's heart gave a quick, painful jump. "Worse?" The old woman nodded. "Creatures that don't howl. They whisper." Lila forced a laugh, pretending not to understand, but the words sank deep into her chest. Whispering creatures. Eyes on the ridge. Her nightmares had been whispering too. On the walk home, the forest felt heavier, as if the trees themselves had heard the warning. Every sound seemed louder: the snap of twigs, the caw of distant crows, the thud of her own heart. She told herself she was imagining things, that her nerves were still raw from seeing Calder again. But then, halfway down the trail, she saw it. A mark on a tree. At first, she thought it was just moss or bark peeled away by the storm. But when she looked closer, she froze. It was a symbol, two crescent shapes carved into the trunk. One inside the other dot. It was a pack mark. His pack mark. Lila's throat went dry. Calder had been here. Maybe this morning. Maybe right now. She spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing. But she could feel him. Or something like him. The bond between them was faint but alive, like a thread humming under her skin. Every step she took made it stronger. By the time she reached the cabin, dusk was falling. She lit a lantern, locking the door behind her. The shadows in the corners stretched long and strange. She moved to the small cradle near the fireplace and knelt beside it. Inside, Elias slept soundly, his tiny chest rising and falling, his fingers curled around a wool blanket. He looked peaceful, too peaceful. Lila brushed a curl from his forehead and whispered, "You're safe. I promise." But the words tasted false. The candlelight flickered, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw movement in the reflection of the window. A figure standing by the tree line, watching. When she blinked, it was gone. That night, the whispers came back. They started as faint murmurs, like wind moving through leaves. Then they grew clearer, soft voices, calling her name from just beyond the walls. Lila. She sat up in bed, heart hammering. The sound wasn't inside her head. It was outside, near the window. She stood slowly, gripping the edge of the blanket, trying not to breathe too loudly. Through the thin curtain, she could see the dark outline of the forest. Mist drifted between the trees, and something moved in it, slow, deliberate, circling the cabin. "Calder?" She whispered. No answer. Only the faint crunch of footsteps in the wet earth. Then a knock. 3 soft knocks on the door. Lila froze. The last time she'd heard that knock, it had been him. But this didn't feel like him. This felt wrong. She crept closer, each step careful on the creaking floor. "Who's there?" She called. Silence. Then another knock. Louder this time. Elias stirred in his sleep, letting out a small cry. Lila's fear turned sharp and protective. She snatched the iron poker from beside the fireplace and moved to stand between the door and the cradle. The latch rattled. Someone or something was trying to open it. Go away. She shouted. Then came a voice, low and distant, like it traveled through a tunnel. You shouldn't have lied to him, Lila. The words chilled her to the bone. She stepped back, clutching the poker tighter. Who are you? No answer. Just the whisper of movement fading into the trees. When she finally dared to open the door, there was no one there. Only the rain beginning again, and something left on the doorstep, a single black feather. Slick with water. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window until dawn, watching the forest breathe. Her eyes burned from exhaustion, her hands still shaking. Every few minutes she checked the cradle, needing to see Elias's tiny chest rise and fall. When the first light broke over the trees, she saw the footprints outside, deep, human-shaped, leading away from her door and into the mist. They stopped halfway to the woods, as if the person had vanished into air. Lila's thoughts spiraled. Was it Calder, or something else pretending to sound like him? In her world, those two possibilities were equally dangerous. By midday, she forced herself to move again. She had to think clearly. She had to protect her son. She packed a small bag, filled it with food, water, and a silver dagger she hadn't touched in years. Her hands shook as she strapped it to her thigh. She hoped she'd never need it again. Before stepping outside, she looked once more at the carved mark on the nearby tree. It seemed deeper now, fresh, almost as if someone had added to it overnight another symbol, smaller, beneath the first. A warning, something ancient and cold, stirred in her chest. The forest was no longer just a place of hiding. It was becoming a message. As the day faded into another uneasy twilight, the wind carried the sound of a distant howl, long, low, and sorrowful. But this time, there was something else in it. A second voice, faint but distinct, weaving through the howl like a shadow under water. A whisper. Her name. Lila. She stepped out onto the porch, heart pounding, the feather still on the ground before her. The forest stood dark and still, the mist curling like smoke around the trees. Then she heard it, a branch breaking, footsteps drawing near. Lila turned toward the sound, gripping the dagger in her shaking hand. Something was coming. And this time, it wasn't the alpha. The mist was heavier that morning, curling low to the ground like it was hiding something. The air was cold enough to sting Lila's fingers as she gathered water from the well behind her cabin. Her mind replayed the voice she'd heard the night before, the whisper that knew her lie. You shouldn't have lied to him. Lila. The words echoed in her head with every movement, every breath. She tried to tell herself it was her imagination. That fear had a way of making shadows speak. But fear couldn't leave footprints. And fear didn't knock on doors. Something, or someone had found her. The forest was quiet now, but it wasn't peace she felt. It was pressure. The air felt thick, humming faintly, as if the world itself was waiting for something to happen. Birds perched silently in the branches, their eyes following her movements. Even the stream beside the cabin ran slower, darker. She felt it before she saw him. That strange pull again, like a thread tugging deep inside her chest, pulling her attention toward the trees. She turned slowly, her breath fogging in the cold air. There, through the drifting mist, stood a figure. He was tall, his frame broad beneath a dark coat. His hair was black as midnight, slicked back by rain. For a moment Lila thought it was Calder, but no. This man's presence was colder, wilder. His eyes glowed faintly, not gold like an alpha's, but a deep silver that seemed to see straight through her. He wasn't human. That much was clear. But he wasn't Calder, ever, and that made him far more dangerous. Lila took a step back, clutching the handle of the water bucket like a weapon. Who are you? The man didn't move. He just watched her, the mist swirling around his boots like smoke. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and low, carrying easily through the air. "You don't remember me." Her pulse quickened. "Should I?" He tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile ghosting over his lips. "Not yet." Something in his tone made her skin prickle. Lila glanced toward the cabin, thinking of Elias asleep inside. "If you came to threaten me, I didn't come to harm you," he interrupted softly. "If I wanted to, you'd already know." The way he said it, steady, certain, not cruel but honest, made her heart skip. He wasn't boasting. He was stating a fact. "Then what do you want?" she asked. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until the distance between them was filled with nothing but fog and tension. "To warn you." Lila's grip tightened on the bucket. "About what?" He looked past her, toward the cabin, his eyes softening slightly. "You're not as hidden as you think. The Alpha isn't your only problem." Her breath caught. "You know Calder?" A shadow flickered across his expression, something between amusement and pity. "I know what he's capable of." "And what hunts him?" The wind picked up, rustling the trees. The mist thickened, wrapping them both in a strange stillness. "Who are you?" she whispered again, this time more quietly, like speaking too loudly might break the spell between them. He met her gaze, and for the first time, she noticed the faint scars along his neck like claw marks that had long since healed. "My name is Kale." She recognized that name. Whispers from the old pack. A rogue once accused of betraying the Council of Alphas. A name spoken like a curse and a warning. "You're a traitor," she breathed. His lips curved slightly. "I prefer survivor." Her heart raced faster now. She should have been terrified. Rogues were unpredictable, often violent. There was something in Kale's eyes that didn't match the stories. Something wounded. Familiar. He studied her in silence, then said quietly, "You're not safe here. The rogues that attacked you weren't alone. Something stronger is moving through these woods. It's looking for him. And for you." Leela took a step back, shaking her head. "Why are you telling me this? Why help me?" Kale's gaze softened, almost sorrowful. "Because once someone helped me, and she looked at me the same way you just did." The forest seemed to lean closer around them. Lila didn't know what to say. Her instincts told her not to trust him, but her instincts had been wrong before. She remembered the night she fled Calder, the guilt and confusion that followed. She had trusted love then, and it had nearly destroyed her. But Kale's presence was different. He didn't demand trust. He didn't even ask for it. He just stood there, solid and strange, like a force of nature that had chosen for reasons she couldn't understand not to hurt her. "Why did you say I'm not safe?" she asked. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Because the ones who come next won't knock. They'll tear down your door. And when they find what you've been hiding, they won't stop until they have it." Lila's stomach twisted. "You mean my son?" Kale didn't answer, but the look in his eyes was enough. "How do you know about him?" she whispered. "I don't need to know," he said softly. "I can feel it." There was something haunting about the way he said it, like the truth was written in the air between them. A moment of silence stretched long and fragile. The mist thinned just enough for a beam of pale sunlight to break through, touching Kale's face. For the first time, she saw the color in his eyes, silver with faint rings of blue. Like moonlight caught in water. He was beautiful in a way that felt wrong. Like staring at lightning or the edge of a blade. She should have looked away. She didn't. For a heartbeat their gazes held, and something electric passed between them, a pull she didn't understand, deep and wordless. Kale blinked, breaking the spell. "You should leave this place," he said, "before the moon turns full again." "And go where?" she asked. The pack will never take me back. Calder will. Calder won't be your biggest threat, Cale cut in. His voice dropped lower, urgent now. There are things moving in the forest that even alphas can't control. Things that wake when the bond between mates is broken. Lila's throat tightened. How do you know about the bond? Cale's eyes darkened. Because I had one too. For the first time, she saw the pain flicker in his expression. It wasn't just warning that brought him here. It was memory. He turned as if to leave, but she stepped forward without thinking. Wait. He looked back, his face half hidden by the mist. You said you came to warn me, she said. Is that all? Cale's gaze lingered on her a moment longer than it should have. That depends on whether you listen. Their eyes met again, and for a single heartbeat, everything else fell away. The fear, the secrets, even Calder's shadow. It was just them, standing in the cold mist, caught between danger and something they both refused to name. Then Cale took a step back, his figure fading into the fog. Be careful, Lila. The forest remembers lies. And before she could reply, he was gone. When the silence returned, it felt heavier than before. Lila stood alone, the bucket still in her hands, the water rippling inside it. Her mind raced, torn between disbelief and a strange, burning curiosity. Who was Cale really? A threat? A protector? Or something else entirely, something fate had sent to test the fragile life she'd built? She turned toward the cabin. The window flickered with firelight, and she saw her own reflection in the glass pail, wide-eyed, trembling. For the first time since she'd run from the pack, she didn't know who she feared more, Calder, or the stranger who had just disappeared into the mist. And as the wind picked up again, carrying faint whispers through the trees, one thought refused to leave her mind that she would see him again. And when she did, everything would change. The next few days felt like waking up inside someone else's dream. Lena tried to hold on to her routine, the school runs, her small job at the bookstore, the quiet evenings when she tucked Lily into bed and listened to the wind hum outside. But everything around her had started to change. The woods, once a comfort, now seemed alive in ways she couldn't explain. When she passed them on her way home, the trees seemed to lean toward her, whispering softly in a language she couldn't understand. The birds didn't sing in the mornings anymore. Even the air felt heavier, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. And then there were the dreams. They came every night, without mercy. Flashes of moonlight, a heartbeat in the dark, and eyes that burned gold. In those dreams, she wasn't afraid. She knew the shadow that came toward her. It was him, the stranger she'd met that night, the man who had said her name like it meant something ancient. Elias. She'd tried to convince herself she had imagined him, that he was just a trick of the storm, a shape her mind had created when fear took over. But in every dream, his voice was clearer, closer. You shouldn't have lied, he whispered once, and she woke up drenched in cold sweat, her pulse racing so hard she could hear it. She told no one, not her sister, not the old neighbor who often checked on her, not even her reflection. But something inside her, the part that used to believe in things before life became practical, knew she wasn't imagining it. Something was coming for her. One morning, she noticed muddy paw prints outside her door. Large ones. Too large to belong to any dog she knew. They circled her porch, then vanished into the woods. She felt a chill crawl up her neck as she stared at them. Lily came running to her, clutching her little stuffed rabbit, asking what was wrong. Lena forced a smile, saying it was just the neighbor's dog, though she knew that wasn't true. By midday, the wind had changed. It carried a scent she couldn't name, sharp and wild, like rain on fur dot at the bookstore. She tried to focus on her work, but customers came and went like ghosts. One woman, with pale eyes and silver hair, stopped in front of her and leaned across the counter. Her voice was low, but her words cut like glass. "Be careful what you keep hidden," she said. Lena froze. "I'm sorry." The woman smiled faintly. "Secrets have claws, and they always find their way home." Before Lena could respond, the bell above the door jingled, and the woman was gone. That night, she double-locked the door and sat beside Lily's bed until the girl fell asleep. The little one's curls glowed in the soft light, her thumb tucked under her chin. Innocent, unaware. Lena brushed a hand through her daughter's hair, but her mind was elsewhere. She went to the kitchen window. Outside, the forest stood black against the moonlight. It was quiet, too quiet. Then she heard it, a low sound. A growl, distant but unmistakable. Her breath hitched. She turned off the kitchen light and peered through the glass. For a moment, she thought she saw something, a shape moving between the trees. Broad shoulders, the glint of gold eyes. But when she blinked, it was gone. The next morning, her neighbor, old Mr. Cray, waved her over the fence. He was pale and shaking, pointing toward his chicken coop. "Something tore through it last night," he said. "Tore the wire like it was nothing." Lena followed his finger. The co-op was in ruins, feathers scattered everywhere. The ground was torn, clawed deep. "Wolf," Mr. Cray whispered. "Or something worse." She forced a laugh, pretending she didn't believe him. But her hands trembled. That night, she found a dead crow on her doorstep. Its wings were spread wide, as if it had fallen mid-flight. Its eyes, small and black, reflected the moonlight. Lena buried it under the tree by the porch. Whispering a prayer she barely remembered by the time she got inside. The air had changed again. Warmer. Electric. She felt it before she saw him. A presence in the dark. She turned, and there he was. Elias stood by the edge of the porch, half in shadow. His eyes burned faintly, like embers trying not to die out. His clothes were dark, damp from the night. "Don't scream," he said quietly. She couldn't have screamed if she tried. Her breath caught in her chest as every memory of their first meeting came flooding back. The storm, his voice, the way the air had crackled around him. "What do you want from me?" She whispered. He took a slow step forward, his gaze fixed on hers. "You lied, Lena." Her heart pounded. "About what?" "You know," he said, almost softly. "About the child." The words sliced through her like cold water. Her body went rigid. "Stay away from her." Elias stopped, his expression unreadable. "You can't keep her from what she is." Her mind spun. "What are you talking about?" He looked at her then. Really looked. And for the first time, she saw something behind the danger. Regret. Pain. Something ancient and broken. "Do you really not remember?" he asked. A flash of memory burned behind her eyes. Moonlight, heat, the scent of rain and pine. A night she had buried deep, thinking it was only a dream. Lena stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table. "No, that's impossible." Elias's jaw tightened. The truth always finds its way home. A sudden crash shattered the moment. The window behind her exploded inward, glass flying. A dark shape lunged through, snarling, eyes glowing red. Lena screamed as Elias moved faster than any man could, his body slamming into the creature with a force that shook the floor. They crashed into the shadows, teeth flashing, claws tearing wood. Lena grabbed Lily and ran toward the hallway, heart thundering. From the porch, she heard Elias roar, a sound that wasn't human. Then silence. Only the wind moved through the trees again. Lena clutched her child, trembling as she looked back toward the open door. The moonlight poured in like cold silver, painting the blood on the floor. Whatever world she thought she lived in, it was gone. And the one that replaced it was just beginning to wake. Morning came too soon, carrying the scent of smoke and pine. Lena hadn't slept. She sat on the porch steps, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the place where the creature had fallen. The blood was gone. The broken glass too. It was as if the night had swallowed its own evidence. But she knew what she'd seen. The teeth, the claws, the eyes that glowed like dying fire. And Elias, his speed, his strength, the roar that had not belonged to any man. He wasn't human. That thought should have terrified her. But what unsettled her most was the strange calm she felt when he had stood between her and the creature. Like some part of her knew him, even before her mind accepted it. When she heard footsteps approaching, she turned sharply. Elias stood a few feet away, his black coat torn, his face pale beneath the early light. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I never left," he said quietly. There was no arrogance in his tone, only weariness. He looked like a man who had been fighting something for too long. Lena rose slowly. "That thing. Last night. What was it?" He didn't answer at first. His gaze drifted toward the forest. "One of mine. Or what used to be." Her breath caught. "Yours?" Elias turned his head slightly, meeting her eyes. "It's not what you think." "Then what should I think?" she demanded, the fear finally cracking through her calm. "You show up out of nowhere, you know my name, my child, and then monsters come crashing through my house. What do you want from me?" For a moment, the world held its breath. Then he said softly, "To protect you." The words disarmed her completely. Lena's heartbeat stumbled. "Why?" He looked down, hands clenched at his sides. "Because I owe you that much." His voice was thick with something: grief, guilt, longing. She didn't know. Lily's small voice broke the silence. "Mama?" Lena turned. The little girl stood by the door, rubbing her eyes, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Elias's expression changed, his eyes softened. His shoulders stiffened like a man fighting himself. Lily blinked up at him. "Who's that?" Lena hesitated, unsure what to say. "Just a friend." Elias's jaw tightened. "You should get her inside," he murmured. When Lena looked back, his eyes flickered gold for the briefest second before he turned and disappeared into the trees. The day crawled by. Lena tried to pretend things were normal. She cleaned the kitchen, replaced the broken glass, kept Lily close. But everywhere she looked, she saw him. Or rather, felt him. By evening, she couldn't take it anymore. She walked into the woods, following the faint path that led toward the creek. She didn't know why, only that something in her chest pulled her forward. She found him sitting on a fallen log near the water, his coat draped beside him. His hands were bare, his knuckles scraped. "You shouldn't have come," he said without turning. "You keep saying that," she replied quietly. "And yet here we are." He looked up at her then, the corners of his mouth curving just slightly. "You always did have a stubborn heart." She frowned. "What do you mean, always?" Elias's gaze met hers, steady and unreadable. "There are things you don't remember. For good reason. Try me." He hesitated, studying her face as if weighing how much truth she could bear. "Do you believe in fate, Lena?" "I believe in bad luck," she said bitterly. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes they're the same thing." They fell into silence, the wind whispering through the trees. When he finally spoke again, his voice was softer. "You have her eyes, you know." The same shade of grey before the storm. Whose eyes? She asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a stone and tossed it into the creek. You think this world is simple. It's not. There are things walking beside you every day, unseen, unheard, until one of them remembers your name. Lena shivered. You talk like you're not one of us. He looked at her for a long time. Then quietly he said, I'm not. Her breath caught. Something flickered across his face, sadness, maybe even shame. You saw enough last night to know I'm not lying. But what are you? She whispered. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. Once long ago I was a man. A leader. I made a choice that cursed me and everyone who followed me. Now we're something between men and beasts. Bound to the moon. Bound by blood. She took a step back. You're saying you're a... Say it, he said quietly. A werewolf. The word felt strange in her mouth. Elias's lips curved, not quite into a smile. We don't use that word. It sounds like a story. But yes. Lena shook her head. That's not possible. He stood, his movements graceful, too precise. You saw the impossible and it spared you. She swallowed hard, the truth clawing its way into her chest. And that thing last night, one who lost control, Elias said. The curse is a chain. Some break free. Some don't. Why come to me? She asked, her voice trembling. Why now? Because you're not safe anymore, he said. Because others know what I know. Which is? He looked straight into her eyes. That the child carries my blood. Her heart stopped. No. Elias's expression didn't change. You can deny it all you want. But she's part of what I am. That's why they'll come. Lena stepped back, shaking her head. You're wrong. That night, it was just a dream. Dreams don't leave scars, he said quietly. She felt dizzy. You can't expect me to believe this. I don't expect anything. But you will see. He turned away, heading deeper into the forest. Lena wanted to run after him, to scream at him, to demand answers, but her voice failed her. The shadows swallowed him whole. That night, the wind howled again. Lena lay in bed beside Lily, staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her heart race. The creak of wood, the moan of the trees, the far-off cry of something wild. She rose quietly, moving to the window. The moon hung low, full and pale. The world shimmered beneath its light. Something moved by the tree line. Her breath fogged the glass. She squinted, heart pounding. Elias stood there barefoot, shirtless, his skin glowing faintly under the moon. His chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. But what froze her wasn't his presence. It was the way his eyes glowed gold, brighter than before. His body began to tremble. His hands curled, his muscles tightening as if fighting something beneath his skin. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. He dropped to his knees, a sound tearing from his throat, half roar, half cry. For a moment, she thought he was dying. Then she saw his shadow stretching, twisting, changing. Bones reshaped. A low growl rumbled from deep within him, and when he lifted his head toward the moon, she saw the truth. Elias wasn't just cursed. He was the beast itself, the man she had once dreamed of, the one she had thought she imagined was something far beyond her understanding. And he was bound to her life in ways she could no longer deny. Lena didn't remember breathing as she watched him change. The air seemed to stop. Every sound, every whisper of the night bent around Elias as his body trembled beneath the pull of the moon. The sight was both terrifying and strangely beautiful, the raw power of something ancient breaking through human skin. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. Bones shifted. Shadows deepened. The man she had begun to care for became something else entirely. A creature of wild grace and violent sorrow. When the transformation ended, what stood before the forest wasn't a man anymore. It was a massive wolf. Dark as the night, eyes glowing gold. Lena's hand covered her mouth to stop the cry building in her throat. The wolf lifted its head, its gaze finding hers through the window. For a moment they just stared at each other. Her pulse pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. Then the wolf turned, vanishing into the trees. Lena stumbled back, shaking. The image wouldn't leave her mind. The way he had looked at her, not with hunger, but something else. Recognition. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the first light touched the sky, she made herself a cup of coffee she didn't drink and sat at the table, still trembling. Her thoughts tangled together. Fear, disbelief, and a strange ache in her chest she didn't want to name. By the time the clock struck 9, there was a knock at her door. Her heart jumped. She opened it slowly. Elias stood there, looking human again. Clothes torn, hair damp, eyes tired. But there was no mistaking it now. Beneath the calm surface, something wild moved. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Lena hesitated, then nodded. He stepped inside, his gaze scanning the room. The broken glass still under the rug, the untouched coffee on the counter, the little shoes by the door. "You saw me," he said simply. It wasn't a question. She nodded, her throat dry. "I saw everything." He lowered his head. "Then you know what I am." "A monster," she whispered before she could stop herself. He looked at her then, hurt flickering across his face. "If that's the word you choose." Her hands clenched. "You should have told me." "I wanted to," he said. "But I didn't know if you'd remember me first." "Remember you?" She echoed, confusion deepening. He sighed, leaning against the table. "The night 5 years ago. The storm. The woods. You were running from something. I don't know what. I found you. You were afraid. But you didn't run from me." Lena's breath caught. A faint image flashed in her mind. Rain, thunder, a shadow stepping toward her through the trees. She had thought it was a dream. "You said it wasn't real," she murmured. "It was," he said. "And it changed everything." Her heart raced. "You're saying Lily, she's mine," he said quietly. "Our blood runs the same." Lena shook her head. "No, that's not possible. I would have known." "Would you?" His eyes met hers, steady, unblinking, filled with something between sorrow and longing. "You forgot because I made you forget. It was the only way to keep you safe." She stepped back, her voice trembling. "You did what?" "The night you gave birth," he said softly. "I felt it through the bond. They were hunting me, Lena, my own kind. If they knew you carried my child, they would have taken her. So I found you. I made you forget me. Forget that night. Forget what I was. It was the only way to save you both." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You took my memories." He nodded. "I never meant to. But it was that or lose you." Lena's heart broke and hardened at once. "You had no right. I know." His voice cracked. "I've carried that guilt every night since." She turned away, pressing a trembling hand to her forehead. Everything she thought she knew about her life, the past, her child, even her own memories, felt like a web spun from lies. "I trusted you," she whispered. Elias's voice softened. "You still can." She faced him again. "How? You lied to me from the start. You let me think Lily was." Her voice cracked before she could finish. "You let me build a life on a secret you buried. I was trying to protect you, he said again, but the words sounded weaker this time. She took a deep breath, forcing her voice to steady. Protect me from what? He hesitated, his eyes flickering gold for just a moment. From them. From the ones who follow me. Who are they? The Shadow Pack, he said. They broke away after the curse spread. They hunt what they can't control. Bloodlines like hers. They can smell her power. They'll come for her, Lena. And when they do, I'll be the only one standing between her and death. The room fell silent. Lena stared at him, the words barely sinking in. You expect me to believe that? That my daughter, my little girl, is in danger because of something out of a fairy tale? He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. You've seen enough to know it's no fairy tale. She backed away, shaking her head. You're dangerous. All of this, it's madness. Elias's expression darkened, pain and anger warring in his eyes. You think I wanted this curse? That I wanted to live half a life in the dark? I'd give anything to be human again. But I can't change what I am, or what she is. Something in his tone, raw, broken, made her chest ache, but she refused to show it. I can't do this, she said. You need to go. He didn't move. Please, she whispered. Leave. Finally, he nodded. As you wish. He turned toward the door, but before stepping out, he paused. If anything happens, call my name. Even if you don't want to believe me, I'll hear you. Then he was gone. Lena sank to the floor, trembling, her mind spinning. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Was he a monster or a protector? A liar or a savior? Outside, the forest stood silent, but something in the air had changed. The wind carried a distant howl, deep and mournful. Lily stirred in her sleep upstairs, murmuring softly. Lena looked toward the sound and froze. Through the window, beyond the porch, she saw movement, figures in the trees, dark shapes watching the house, eyes glinting faintly red in the moonlight. And this time, they weren't looking for Elias. They were looking for her. The rain had returned to Silverpine Valley. It came down in a whisper first, a thin mist over the dark woods, soft enough to sound almost peaceful. But to Clara, the storm only made her heart heavier. She stood by her window, hands gripping the sill, eyes tracing the faint line of the forest beyond her cabin. Somewhere in those trees was Elias, the man who had turned her world inside out, the man who wasn't entirely human. A week had passed since she saw him change. The memory haunted her, the flash of silver eyes, the sound of bones shifting, the growl that wasn't quite human but somehow familiar, almost sorrowful. And yet, even after what she saw, part of her still longed for him. She told herself she should hate him. He had lied. He had hidden the truth. But every time she closed her eyes, she could feel his voice echoing inside her like a low hum, a voice that had once promised protection. That night, she couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled like a warning, and the trees bent low, their shadows crawling across her floor. She turned on the small lamp beside her bed, its yellow light barely cutting through the gloom. A soft knock broke the silence. Clara froze. 3 slow taps. Familiar, careful. Her heart raced. She moved to the door, each step uncertain. When she opened it, the sight nearly took her breath away. Elias stood there, drenched from the rain. His dark hair clung to his forehead, his shirt torn at the shoulder. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Not human, but not entirely beast either. Clara, he whispered, his voice low and rough. I had to see you. She wanted to close the door, to demand answers, to tell him to leave her alone before his world swallowed hers completely. But when his gaze met hers, the words melted away. You shouldn't be here, she said instead, her voice trembling. Someone might see you. I don't care, he said. They already know I'm close. They? He glanced over his shoulder into the darkness. There are others. Hunters. Old enemies. They followed my scent here. Her stomach turned cold. Because of me. Because of what I am. He said quietly. But you're the reason I can't keep running. She stepped back, unsure if it was fear or something else making her hands shake. You're putting me in danger. I know, he said. That's why I need to protect you. His words struck her harder than she expected. Despite everything, the lies, the fear, his presence made her feel strangely safe. She didn't understand why. He stayed inside the small cabin for hours. The rain grew heavier, thunder rolling across the sky like distant growls. They spoke little at first, sitting across from each other near the small fireplace. Elias's eyes stayed on the flames. You shouldn't have seen what you saw, he murmured. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Then tell me, Clara said softly. What are you? He hesitated, jaw tightening. Something that shouldn't exist anymore. My kind were hunted long ago. We were meant to protect, but power makes enemies. Now, the ones who come after me, they don't stop. She studied him carefully. His face, though tired, carried a kind of sadness that went deeper than fear. And you think hiding here will save you? I think being near you reminds me why I fight at all. He said. The words made her chest tighten. She wanted to look away, but his honesty pinned her in place. Later, as the fire dimmed, Elias rose suddenly, his head snapping toward the window. His senses sharpened. Clara could almost feel the tension ripple through him. What is it? She whispered. They're here. Before she could ask who, a faint glow appeared outside, torches moving through the rain. Dozens of them. Clara's pulse quickened. Shadows moved between the trees. Dark figures in long coats, voices murmuring in the distance. Hunters, Elias said, his voice low and grim. They won't stop until one of us is dead. She backed away. Then go. Please, I can't watch you. I'm not leaving you, he said. His eyes flashed silver again, sharper this time. You don't understand, Clara. They'll use you to find me. You've been marked since the night I first met you. Her breath caught. Marked? He nodded. When I touched you, it left a trace. My scent. My energy. To them, it means you're mine. The room fell silent. His words hung between them like a forbidden truth. Yours? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias's expression shifted. Part pain, part longing. I didn't mean for it to happen. But the bond, once it forms, it can't be broken. Clara shook her head. You're talking about something impossible. He took a slow step toward her. And yet you feel it too, don't you? The pull when I'm near? Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. Yes, she felt it, the strange calm when he looked at her. The way the world seemed quieter, sharper, when he spoke. But she couldn't admit it. Not now. Not when danger surrounded them. The knocking came again, this time not gentle. A harsh, thunderous pounding that shook the door. Elias. A voice shouted from outside. Come out and face what you've become. Elias's jaw tightened. Stay behind me, he said. Before she could protest, the door splintered inward, and the glow of fire filled the room. Men in dark coats stood in the doorway, holding silver-tipped weapons. One of them pointed toward Clara. The woman's marked. Take her. Elias moved faster than she could see. A flash of movement, a low growl, and one of the men flew backward into the rain. The others scattered, shouting. Clara gasped, frozen in place as Elias's body shifted slightly, his eyes now bright silver, his voice no longer human. "Run," he growled. "Go to the cellar, now." She hesitated, torn between fear and the unexplainable urge to stay. The man before her was half beast, half savior. "Elias, please," he said, turning toward her, his voice breaking. "If you love me at all, run." That was the first time he had ever said it. "If you love me." She stumbled toward the cellar door as the sounds of the fight grew louder. The last thing she saw before climbing down into the dark was Elias standing tall against the storm, his silver eyes burning like twin moons. The night swallowed his roar. And Clara, trembling in the cold darkness, finally realized the truth. Whatever he was, whatever danger followed him, her heart was already his. But love, she knew now, was not enough to save them both. And as the sound of footsteps closed in above, she wondered if destiny had already made her choice for her. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. Clara sat in the dark cellar, her knees pulled to her chest, listening to the faint drip of rainwater through the wooden floorboards above. Every sound made her flinch. The memory of Elias's growl, the clash of metal, the shouts of hunters, it all still echoed in her mind. When she finally climbed the narrow steps to the main room, the air smelled of smoke and wet earth. The door hung half broken, rain seeping through the cracks. The fire had died, leaving only the pale morning light to reveal what the night had taken. The cabin was empty. "Elias?" she called softly. No answer. Her voice cracked. The only sound that came back was the forest outside dripping, breathing, alive. She took a trembling breath and stepped out into the clearing. The ground was torn where the fight had happened, muddy footprints leading into the trees. But what froze her heart was something else. A mark burned into the grass, shaped like a crescent moon. It shimmered faintly when she touched it. And when her fingers brushed the symbol, a strange warmth spread through her hand, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She stumbled back. "What is happening to me?" The forest didn't answer. But somewhere deep within the woods, something did. By dusk, she had followed the trail of broken branches to the old part of Silverpine, where the trees grew so close together the light could barely reach the ground. Locals called it the Hollow. They said it was cursed, that strange lights appeared there on nights when the moon turned red. She had always thought it was just a story. But now, her blood hummed with a quiet pull, drawing her deeper inside. The air grew colder. Mist rose from the roots like breath. And then, through the fog, she saw an ancient stone archway, half buried in vines. Strange carvings covered it, symbols she couldn't read. But when she reached out, one of them began to glow the same crescent mark she had seen burned into the ground. Before she could react, the air shimmered. A soft whisper brushed against her ear. A woman's voice, gentle but sorrowful. "Clara." Her breath caught. "Who's there?" The voice came again, closer this time. "You shouldn't have come alone." And then the mist shifted, and from it stepped a woman draped in silver-grey robes, her face pale, her eyes glowing faintly blue. She looked at Clara with a strange mixture of awe and sadness. "You wear the mark," the woman said quietly. "After all these years, the bloodline still lives." Clara took a step back. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "I am a guardian of the Moon Pact," the woman said. "And you are a child of it." Clara shook her head. "No, I'm just a teacher. I live in town. I don't even know what this place is." The woman smiled faintly. "Your mother never told you?" "My mother?" Clara whispered. The guardian nodded. "She was one of us once before she chose to leave the order and live among humans." before she hid you away." The words hit like cold rain. Clara's heart pounded. "That's not possible. My mother died when I was little. She was normal." "There is no such thing as normal when blood remembers," the woman said softly. "You were born under a blood moon, weren't you?" Clara froze. She remembered her father once mentioning it, the night she was born. The moon was red as wine. The guardian's eyes softened. "Then the prophecy is true. The child born under the red moon will bear the mark of the Alpha's mate, the bridge between human and beast." Clara's stomach twisted. "Alpha's mate?" "Yes," the woman said. "Fate bound your lives long before you met. He is drawn to you by blood, and you to him by destiny. You were never meant to be separate." Clara felt dizzy. No, this can't be real. But even as she said it, memories flickered, the strange dreams she'd had since childhood, the shadowed eyes watching her from the woods, the feeling that she was always being followed. It all made sense now, in a way that terrified her. She swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" The woman's expression darkened. "Now the blood calls. The hunters who came last night, they know what you are. You carry power they will try to destroy. And Elias, he will do anything to protect you, even if it means losing himself to the curse." Clara's chest tightened. "The curse?" The guardian hesitated. "His bloodline was bound by the same moon that marked yours. Long ago, an alpha fell in love with a mortal woman. Their union defied the ancient laws, and the gods punished them. Every descendant carries the mark of that forbidden lover, mark that can only be broken if the two bloodlines meet again under the blood moon." Her voice lowered. "You and Elias are those descendants." The world seemed to tilt beneath Clara's feet. Her whole life, her mother's secrecy, the way the forest called to her, the connection she felt to Elias, it wasn't coincidence. It was prophecy. "I don't want this," Clara whispered. "I just wanted a normal life. Normal lives are for those untouched by destiny," the guardian said gently. "But you were born to end an ancient war." Before Clara could respond, a deep rumble shook the ground. The trees trembled. The air grew heavy. The guardian's eyes widened. "They found us." She turned sharply toward the trees. Through the mist, red lights flickered torches again, moving fast. "Go," the guardian said, grabbing Clara's arm. "Find Elias before the moon rises. He is your only protector now." "But what about you?" Clara cried. The woman smiled sadly. "My time ended long ago." And with that, her body faded into mist. Clara ran. Branches whipped her face as she stumbled through the dark woods, her heart racing. Behind her, she heard voices, shouts, metal clashing, the distant howl of something wild. The path opened suddenly, revealing a small pond reflecting the red glow of the rising moon. She stopped, gasping for breath. The water shimmered like blood. And then she saw her reflection. Her eyes, they were glowing faintly silver. She stumbled back, shaking. No, this isn't happening." But even as fear clawed at her chest, a whisper rose in her mind, soft and familiar. "Clara!" It was Elias. His voice, distant but calling to her. The wind howled, and she turned toward the sound. And there, standing at the edge of the pond, half hidden by the shadows, was Elias himself. His shirt was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes burned with the same silver light that now flickered in hers. He took a slow step forward. "You know now, don't you?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Who am I?" He looked at her with both love and sorrow. "You're mine," he said softly. "But more than that, you're the one they've been hunting for centuries." The blood moon rose higher, bathing them both in crimson light. And in that moment, Clara finally understood her story had never begun in this life. It had started long before, written in blood and moonlight. And now, destiny had come to collect. The blood moon hung high over the valley, red and full like an open wound in the sky. Clara stood frozen at the edge of the pond, her reflection shimmering beside Elias's. His silver eyes glowed faintly, matching the strange light now burning within her own. The world felt strange, alive, and trembling, as if the earth itself was waiting for what would happen next. Elias reached for her hand. His touch was warm, despite the cold night. "We don't have much time," he said quietly. "They'll come for you now." She nodded, her throat dry. "The hunters." "Yes. They want what's inside you, the moon mark. If they destroy you, they destroy the balance that holds both worlds apart." Clara felt the weight of his words sink into her chest. "Then we run," she said. "We find a way to stop them." Elias didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the forest behind her, where faint orange lights flickered again. Torches. "They've already found us." They ran through the trees, branches whipping against their faces, their breath visible in the cold air. The hunters were close. She could hear their shouts echoing through the woods, mixed with the distant bark of dogs trained to follow supernatural scent. Elias moved like a shadow, fast and silent. Even wounded, he was strong, his every step sure and protective. Clara tried to keep up, her heart pounding not only from fear, but from the strange energy rushing through her veins. Something had changed inside her since touching the mark in the clearing. Her senses felt sharper. The forest seemed alive with whispers and movement. When she looked toward the shadows, she could almost see things that weren't their shapes, running alongside them. Faint outlines of glowing eyes watching. "What are they?" she whispered as they ran. Elias didn't look back. "Spirits of the old pack," he said. "They guard the Moonblood line. They'll protect you for now." His voice trembled slightly, and for the first time, she realized how exhausted he was. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, Clara could see the hunters spread out below, dozens of them moving in formation, their torches cutting through the fog. Elias turned to her. "We can't stay here." "Then where?" "There's a place," he said. "A cave hidden in the cliffs beyond the river. It's all protected by runes. They won't be able to cross the barrier." Clara hesitated. "And you?" "I'll get you there." But something in his tone made her uneasy. "Elias, what aren't you telling me?" He didn't answer. By the time they reached the river, the night had grown darker. Clouds covered the moon, and the only light came from flashes of lightning in the distance. Elias stopped beside the rushing water. "We'll have to cross here," he said. "They won't expect it." Clara shivered. The current looked wild, swollen from the storm. "It's too dangerous." He smiled faintly. "Everything about this night is dangerous." Before she could argue, he stepped into the water, gripping her hand tightly. The icy current pulled at her legs, but he held her steady, guiding her across. Halfway through, a sound split the air, a sharp whistle. Then came the crack of a crossbow. Elias pushed her aside just in time. The silver-tipped bolt sliced past his shoulder, grazing his skin. He staggered but didn't stop. "Keep moving." They made it to the other side, breathless and soaked. Clara reached for him, panic in her eyes. Blood trickled from the wound on his arm, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You're hurt." "I'll heal," he said through gritted teeth. But she could see the pain behind his eyes. She tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it against his arm. "No, you won't if you keep losing blood like this." His gaze softened as she tied the cloth around the wound. "You shouldn't care about me." "I can't help it," she whispered. Their eyes met, And for a moment everything else, the chase, the fear, the cold disappeared. Only the sound of the river remained, and the feeling that their hearts were beating in time. But before either could speak again, the forest erupted with noise, shouts, footsteps. The hunters had crossed the river. Elias pulled Clara close. "Run, I'll hold them off." "No," she cried. "You'll be killed." He shook his head. "I can't let them take you. You're the only one who can end this curse." Tears filled her eyes. "Not without you." For a second, his expression broke pain, love, and resignation all at once. Then he leaned forward, pressed his forehead against hers, and whispered, "If they catch me, don't come back. Promise me." Before she could answer, he pushed her toward the trees and turned to face the oncoming hunters. Clara ran. Branches tore at her skin. Her breath came in short gasps, but she couldn't stop. Behind her, the sounds of battle echoed, growls, shouts, and the crack of silver weapons. Then came a roar that made her blood run cold. It wasn't human. She stopped, gripping a tree for balance. Through the mist, she saw flashes of light silver and red clashing in the dark. "Elias," she whispered. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, out of the shadows, one of the hunters stumbled into view. Blood on his face, eyes wide with terror. "He's not alone," the man gasped before collapsing. "Not alone." Clara turned back toward the river, and what she saw next froze her where she stood. Through the trees, she saw two figures, Elias and another man, both with glowing silver eyes. But the other one looked almost exactly like Elias. Same features, same voice when he spoke, but colder, darker. "I warned you, brother," the stranger said, his tone dripping with hatred. "You can't protect a human and expect to survive." Elias's voice was low, fierce. "She's not just human. She's the key." The stranger smirked. "Then she'd die first." Before Clara could scream, the man lunged at Elias. Claws flashing in the moonlight. The two collided, a blur of fury and silver light. The ground shook beneath their feet. Clara's heart raced. "Brother?" The guardian's words echoed in her mind. "You and Elias are bound by bloodlines. Could this other man be part of the same cursed lineage?" She took a shaky step forward, her mind spinning. She wanted to run to Elias, to stop the fight, but her legs wouldn't move. The power inside her pulsed like fire, desperate to be released. Yet she didn't know how. All she could do was watch as the two brothers fought, under the blood-red moon, one trying to protect her, the other trying to destroy everything she was meant to be. Then, just as lightning tore across the sky, the darker brother threw Elias into the river. Clara screamed. "No!" She ran toward the water, but the force of the storm knocked her down. When she looked up again, the river was raging, wild and deep, and Elias was gone. The darker man stood on the riverbank, his silver eyes fixed on her. "You can't save him," he said, his voice like ice. "But you can save yourself, if you come with me." Clara's heart pounded. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly, his fangs catching the moonlight. "I'm the one your blood was meant to awaken." The wind howled through the valley as the blood moon reached its peak, turning the river crimson, and as Clara stared at the stranger who shared Elias's face, a single terrifying thought struck her. Maybe she had never known who the true Alpha really was. The night had never been so still. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath as Elena stood in the center of the old graveyard, her heart pounding hard against her ribs. The moon was high, cold, silver, and merciless. The air carried a strange chill, the kind that whispered warnings too late to be heard. She could feel him. Lucian. Somewhere in the darkness, he was near. His presence wrapped around her like smoke, familiar, magnetic, dangerous. "Lucian," she called softly. "Please, show yourself." Her voice trembled. She didn't know if it was from fear or longing anymore. He stepped from the shadows, his black coat fluttering in the wind, his eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. That glow wasn't human, it never had been, but now she saw it clearly for what it was. A power that didn't belong to this world. "Elena," he said quietly, voice rough with emotion. "You shouldn't have come." "Then why did you call me?" she asked, taking a step closer. "You knew I would." He looked away, jaw tight. "Because I had to. Because it's the only way to keep you safe." "Safe?" she repeated bitterly. "You call this safe? You vanish for days. You lie. You hide things from me. And now, you drag me to a graveyard in the middle of the night." Lucian's expression softened. "There are things moving against us, Elena. Things you don't understand." "Then make me understand," she shouted. "Stop protecting me by keeping me blind." Her voice echoed against the stones. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. The night sky began to stir, restless. Lucian hesitated, then stepped closer. The light from the moon hit his face, and she saw it, his eyes shifting from silver to a deep, feral red. His veins darkened, tracing sharp lines down his neck. His teeth lengthened barely, but enough to make her breath catch. "Lucian," she whispered. "It's happening again." He turned away quickly, pressing a hand to his chest, as if fighting something inside him. "You have to go, now. I'm not leaving you." "Elena." Suddenly the ground trembled. A cold wind roared through the graves, and from the mist, shadows began to take form, figures cloaked in black, moving like smoke, their eyes glowing faint gold. Lucian's entire body tensed. "They found us." "Who?" Elena gasped, stepping back. "The hunters." Before she could ask more, Lucian was already moving. His speed was not human. He leapt across the ground in a blur, slamming into one of the shadowed figures with a snarl that tore through the night. His strength was wild, terrifying. Elena stumbled behind a stone, clutching her pendant, the one her mother had left her. She didn't know why, but it pulsed with warmth. As if answering something ancient in the air, the hunters surrounded Lucian. Blades flashed, coated with a strange silver light. He fought them off, his movements precise and brutal. But there were too many. One of them turned toward Elena. "There she is," a voice hissed. "The marked one, marked one?" Before she could move, the pendant around her neck burned against her skin. The heat spread down her arms, her veins lighting faintly gold. The hunter froze. "She's awakening," another whispered. Elena screamed as a blinding light burst from the pendant, throwing the attackers back. The air crackled. Lucian turned toward her, his red eyes wide not with hunger, but with shock. "Elena," he breathed. "You have the blood. What are you talking about?" she cried. "What's happening to me?" But before he could answer, one of the hunters drove a silver blade into his side. Lucian roared in pain, his knees buckling. "No!" Elena ran to him, dropping to her knees. The world around them blurred, light and shadow spinning together. "Lucian, stay with me," he coughed, blood dark and thick against his lips. "You need to run." "I'm not leaving you again," she said, tears falling fast. He grabbed her wrist weakly, his touch still warm despite the blood. "You don't understand. That pendant, it's not protection. It's a seal. You were never meant to wear it." "What are you saying?" He met her eyes. "You're part of this world, Elena. You always were. The hunters don't want me, they want you." Her heart froze. That's impossible. You have the mark of the ancients, Lucian whispered. The blood of the firstborns. You're the key to the veil between our worlds. Before she could respond, another explosion of silver light filled the graveyard. The hunters were regrouping, chanting words she couldn't understand. Lucien pushed her back, standing despite his wound. His body began to change again, his eyes burning crimson, his voice deepening with a growl that didn't sound human anymore. Go, Elena. I can't. He turned toward her, face twisted in pain. If you stay, I'll lose control. She could see it, the struggle in his eyes. The creature inside him was taking over, and the man she loved was slipping away. The pendant on her chest pulsed once more, this time faster, brighter, as if reacting to his transformation. Then came the moment that broke her heart. Lucian's voice changed, no longer his own. Run, before I hurt you. Elena stood frozen, torn between fear and love. Every instinct told her to flee. Every piece of her heart screamed to stay. Lucian, she whispered, I won't run from you. His head jerked, his eyes glowing like blood under moonlight. Then I'll make you. He lunged forward, not in love, but in fury, and the ground split beneath them with a deafening crack. Elena fell back, clutching the pendant. The world blurred as light swallowed everything. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold ground. The hunters were gone. The air was still again. But Lucian, he was nowhere to be seen. Only a dark mark remained where he had stood, a scorched imprint, shaped like wings. Her hand shook as she touched the ground. Lucian? No answer. Just silence. Then she saw a figure standing far beyond the fog, half hidden. A woman with pale skin and silver eyes watching her. Elena, the woman called softly. You've finally awakened. Who are you? Elena demanded, standing slowly. The woman smiled faintly. Your mother's sister. Elena froze. That's not possible. My mother, she never told me. She couldn't, the woman interrupted gently. Because she knew what you truly were. The world tilted. The graveyard, the mist, the silence, it all felt unreal. What am I? Elena whispered, barely able to breathe. The woman's smile deepened, almost sorrowful. You are the bridge between light and shadow, the last of our bloodline. And now that Lucian has fallen, your destiny begins. The wind rose again, cold and sharp, carrying the echo of a single howl through the night, low, mournful, and heartbreakingly familiar. Elena's heart shattered. She wasn't sure if it was from fear, or because she finally understood. She hadn't lost Lucien. She had set him free. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient had awakened, with her name written on its soul. The blood moon hung heavy in the sky, its crimson light spilling over the valley like molten fire. Clara stood at the edge of the cliff, wind whipping her hair across her face. Below, the forest spread like a dark ocean, silent except for the distant roar of water from the river where Elias had vanished. Her chest felt tight, her stomach twisted in knots, but she didn't hesitate. Not anymore. Every step she had taken had led her here, the moment she could no longer run from destiny, from her own power, or from the man she loved. She held the pendant her mother had left her, now pulsing strongly against her chest. The warmth from it spread through her, lighting the mark in her veins. The moon mark glowing faintly silver, alive with energy she barely understood. Elena, a voice whispered from behind the mist. She turned sharply. Elias stepped out from the shadows, his body still bearing the wounds from the battle with his darker brother. His eyes glowed silver, shifting occasionally to crimson when the creature inside him tried to break free. You're here, she said softly, moving toward him. Relief and fear tangled in her voice. I never left, he replied, voice low and rough. I promised I'd protect you, even if it killed me. Clara's throat tightened. You've already been hurt enough. He shook his head. No, not enough. Not while they still come for you. Not while your blood calls out to them. They both knew what was waiting ahead. The shadows in the forest were moving, gathering. The hunters, the dark creatures, the ancient enemies of their bloodline. They had sensed the awakening. The power that now radiated from Clara. And now, she had to face them all. I can't fight them all alone, Clara admitted, her voice trembling slightly. You won't, Elias said firmly. I'm here. And now, you're stronger than you've ever been. Clara took a deep breath, gripping his hand. Then let's end this. The forest erupted suddenly, shadows bursting from the trees like smoke. Figures in dark cloaks appeared, silver weapons flashing in the crimson light. Their eyes were cold, merciless, trained to kill. Elias stepped forward, growling low, his body shifting as the beast within him surged toward the enemy. His speed was terrifying. He moved faster than the human eye could follow, striking with claws and fangs, knocking hunters aside. Clara's power reacted to him. Energy coursed through her veins and her moonmark flared bright, sending a pulse through the forest. Shadows recoiled, some screaming, some thrown off their feet. She felt the force of her bloodline in a way she had never experienced before. Her hands glowed as she lifted energy from the pendant, hurling it like a shield to block an attack aimed at Elias. He glanced at her, eyes softening briefly. You're incredible. She forced herself to focus. Her hands trembled, but the power inside her grew stronger with every second. She realized she wasn't just a victim anymore. She was part of this fight. She was part of the bloodline that had survived centuries of hunting. And now she could protect the man she loved. The enemy advanced in waves, relentless. Clara and Elias fought side by side, moving like one being, their movements instinctive, connected by something deeper than blood. But then, from the shadows, a figure emerged taller, darker, more menacing than any other. The figure's eyes glowed crimson, matching the darker side of Elias. It was him, Lucian's twin, his brother, the one who had thrown Elias into the river days ago. Clara, he said, voice cold and cutting. Your blood calls to me. Hand her over, and I may let your mate live. Elias growled, his body trembling. Never. Clara felt the fear rise, but also the determination. She stepped forward, holding her pendant before her. You won't take me, she said, voice ringing with power she hadn't fully controlled until now. Not today. Not ever. The brother laughed, a harsh sound that made the trees shiver. So brave. For a human. I'm not human, she said. Her eyes glowed silver, the energy around her whipping through the clearing like lightning. And I will not let you hurt him or anyone else. The ground shook as the battle began. Elias and his brother clashed first, a violent storm of claws, fangs, and strength. The force of their blows rattled the forest, splitting the earth beneath them. Clara stayed close, her energy flaring with every attack, deflecting strikes from the remaining hunters and pushing them back with blasts of her own light. Hours seemed to pass in moments. The fight was endless, exhausting. Clara's arms ached, her legs burned, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't let the brother win. And Elias, he was fighting not only for her, but for the part of himself he tried to control, the part that could have lost to the darkness if not for her. Finally, she saw her chance. The brother faltered, distracted by her sudden burst of silver energy. Clara pushed her power outward, enveloping him in a dome of light. He screamed, staggering backward, unbalanced. Elias leapt forward, claws extended, striking true. The brother collapsed, barely moving, eyes wide with shock and fury. He vanished into a mist of smoke, leaving only silence behind. Clara sank to her knees, exhausted, trembling. Her pendant dimmed, the energy in her veins receding but leaving her feeling alive in a new way. Elias stumbled toward her, still bleeding, still shifting between his human and beast form. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. "You did it," he whispered, voice hoarse. "You saved us both." I didn't know I could," Clara admitted, tears streaming down her face. "You were never meant to know," Elias said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You had to feel it. You had to awaken." For a moment the world seemed quiet, the blood moon casting a soft crimson glow over them. They clung to each other, hearts beating in unison, breaths mingling in relief. That the calm didn't last. From the far edge of the clearing, a shadow moved slower, darker, heavier than the hunters or the brother. Clara felt it first, deep in her chest. Something ancient, something older than the bloodline, older than the curse. A voice, low and trembling, rose from the shadows. "The mark has awakened, and now it belongs to me." Clara's heart stopped. She looked to Elias. "What is that?" He stiffened, eyes narrowing. "Something I feared would return. Something I hoped never would." The wind rose, twisting the trees violently. The shadow advanced, glowing faintly red beneath the blood moon, carrying a presence that filled the clearing with fear. Clara gripped her pendant tightly. "We've survived this long. We can survive this too." Elias shook his head. "No. This is different. This is not just hunters, not just family. This is the true enemy, the one who cursed our bloodline. And now, it wants you, Clara." The figure stepped into the clearing fully. Its face was hidden beneath the hood, but Clara could feel its eyes piercing her very soul. The energy radiating from it was suffocating. She stepped back, clutching Elias's hand. "What do we do?" He kissed her forehead, whispering, "We fight. But whatever happens, I will not leave you." The shadow advanced. The wind howled. The blood moon reached its peak, bathing them in crimson light. And in that moment, Clara realized the truth. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The world around them seemed to shatter, the forest trembling under the weight of destiny, power, and the bond that tied them together. And somewhere deep in the mist, the enemy waited, patient, unyielding. The blood moon hung low, red as fire, spilling light over the valley like molten glass. Clara stood at the center of the clearing, pendant glowing against her chest, her hand tightly gripping Elias's. The shadow that had haunted them, the one older than the bloodline itself, stood before them, cloaked in darkness, radiating power that made the air tremble. "You've come far, little one," the figure hissed, its voice low and chilling. "The mark awakens. Soon it will belong to me." Clara swallowed, feeling the weight of the words. Her heart beat fast, fear gnawing at her chest, but also determination. She looked at Elias. His silver eyes glowed faintly, but beneath them was the same warmth, the same love that had carried them through every danger. "We're not afraid of you," Elias said firmly, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Whatever you are, we face this together." The shadow laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "Together? Love cannot save you. Destiny cannot be denied." Clara stepped forward, feeling the energy of the pendant flow through her veins. The moon mark pulsed brighter, stronger. She could feel the connection to her mother, to her ancestors, and to Elias. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about survival. It was about choice. She had the power to shape what came next. "You're wrong," Clara said, her voice steady despite the fear. "Destiny isn't something that controls me. I choose him. I choose our lives. I choose to protect what I love." The shadow recoiled slightly, almost surprised. "You dare defy me?" "I do," Clara said, raising her pendant. Light poured from it, filling the clearing, bright enough to push back the shadows, bright enough to make the blood moon itself seem to pale. The figure hissed, advancing, but Clara felt Elias's strength behind her, grounding her. She reached into herself, feeling the courage she had never known she possessed. She didn't fight with claws or teeth. She fought with her bloodline, with the power that had been dormant, waiting for her to accept it. The air shook as the shadow tried to push forward, but the light from Clara's mark formed a barrier. The energy wrapped around Elias too, strengthening him, calming the beast inside him. For the first time, they stood as one human and supernatural, love and power, destiny and choice entwined. "You cannot win," the shadow said, voice rising with fury. "We already have." Clara replied softly but firmly, "Because we know who we are. Together." The shadow shrieked, a sound that echoed across the forest, shaking the trees. But the light continued to grow, stronger, pure, and finally, it struck the darkness. The figure dissipated like smoke, fading into the night with a final scream, leaving nothing behind but the faint echo of its hatred. The clearing fell silent. The blood moon's red light softened, turning silver as clouds passed overhead. Clara sank to her knees, exhausted, trembling from the intensity of the moment. Elias knelt beside her, wrapping her in his arms. His silver eyes returned to their normal glow, warm and alive. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped it." Clara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "We did it," she said. Together. For a long moment they stayed like that, breathing in the calm after the storm. The forest around them was quiet, peaceful, almost reverent. "You've changed," Elias said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're stronger than you ever imagined." Clara smiled faintly. "And you're not just my protector anymore. You're my partner, my equal." He pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "And you're my anchor, Clara. Without you, I would have lost everything." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the journey, the fear, the battles, the losses. So much had been sacrificed. The life she had thought was normal, the safety she had taken for granted, even the certainty that love was safe. But in its place, she had found something real, something powerful, something eternal. "I never thought I'd survive this," she whispered. "Nor did I," Elias admitted. "But you made me believe again. You made me human, even when the beast inside me tried to take over." Clara chuckled softly, the sound shaky but joyful. "Then I guess the curse isn't a curse anymore. It's a choice. And we made it." Elias nodded, his hand covering hers on the pendant. "A choice to fight. A choice to love. A choice to live." They stood together, watching the first pale light of dawn creep over the horizon. The forest glowed softly under the morning sun, and for the first time, Clara felt truly free. The battles were over. The hunters had been driven away, the shadow defeated, and their love had survived every test. But the journey had left its mark. Clara could feel it in her veins, in the strength she had gained, and in the bond she shared with Elias. They had been changed forever, not just by the battles, but by the trust, sacrifice, and love that had carried them through. Will it ever end? Clara asked quietly, resting her head on his shoulder. Some battles may come again, Elias said honestly. But whatever happens, we face it together. Nothing can break us now. Clara smiled, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. Then let's go home. No more shadows, no more fear. Just us. Elias nodded, lifting her hand to his lips. Just us. As they walked back toward the edge of the forest, the morning light warmed their faces. The blood moon faded from the sky, leaving only a soft silver glow behind. Clara's heart felt light, yet full of memories. The fear, the danger, the love, and the victory. She realized something important. Life was never meant to be safe. It was meant to be lived fully, with courage, love, and the willingness to face the impossible. And as she glanced at Elias, walking beside her, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it as one. They had fought fate, faced darkness, and claimed their future together. And in that moment, under the soft glow of morning, the world felt like it belonged to them, both human and supernatural, both love and destiny, forever intertwined. Clara breathed deeply, smiling through the tears. We made it, she whispered. Yes, Elias said, squeezing her hand. We finally made it. And for the first time in her life, Clara felt at peace. The fear, the shadows, the dangers, they were all behind them. What remained was love, courage, and the promise of forever. The forest around them seemed to sigh, a gentle wind rustling the trees. And Clara knew that the story wasn't just over, it had truly begun.